comic representations of what opera is. So I don't necessarily fit those stereotypes.
There is no justice for the poor.
Hi everyone, this is Silas Ram, AsianCultureVulture.com. I'm delighted you could join us. We're back in London and we're going to be speaking to Sandeep Gurrapadi, who is an opera singer, and he's about to appear in an opera called Sliver Spoon, which is all about Princess Diana and Dodi Fayed. So let's go and meet him and find out more. Sandeep, welcome to AsianCultureVulture.com. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me here. Yeah.
Welcome. It's a great pleasure to have you. So Sandeep, tell us a little bit about Dodi Fayed, the character you play, and the music involved in the opera. Sure.
So yeah, as you mentioned, it's the opera is called Sliver Spoon, and it's by Lisa Logan. It's been a couple of years in the making, but it's a wonderful now that it's all coming together, and the cast. It's a great cast of people, and the entire production is going to be a wonderful experience, and we're doing it all the way up in Wales. Yeah, I mean, Dodi is an interesting character. I only knew about him very, as much as people would have scratched the surface of it. Right. I was aware, but I mean, through the opera, there's this, the way that Lisa has written the score and the music, and there's this interesting side of him, which is there's this struggle between him on one hand being essentially a billionaire son and having that, and then kind of going into this very, or at least the beginnings of what it seems to be like the difficulties that may have emerged between these two, the cultural differences, obviously there's like an ethnic difference, but also the status, which is all very interesting. I mean, at the end of the day, it's an opera. So the thing is the music comes first. And so, there's a lot of drama for sure. But it's really serving the purpose of the music, which is an interesting way of looking at it. Yeah,
absolutely. So tell us a little bit about your journey in opera music. You grew up in the US?
Yeah, so I have a very interesting and kind of wayward journey to come to where I am at this point. I was born in America and I grew up there, but then we moved to India when I was just about in the middle of my high school years. And so I finished my high school in India, and I was there until I was about 19, 20.
Wow.
Which is when I came to London to then finish my master's, and now I'm doing a Ph.D. actually as well at the Guildhall School of Music. Yeah. So, but it's a very wayward journey towards music, because opera was not something that was a common thing in. I come from a South Indian family, and although my entire family is quite, they're music enthusiasts, they love music. Western classical was like a kind of left field for them. I was doing biotechnology engineering as a good Indian kid could do, and but then there's a music conservatoire which was opened by a famous composer, A.R. Rahman in South India. Yeah. And he opened this conservatoire, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna defer my place for about 9 months, and I'm gonna go do this course and see what happens. Right. And I kind of stuck there, and I got sucked into this beautiful field. My family members, people, they play instruments and they sing as well. So there was always music. I never did it formally, like in a very structured way, until I was much later in my teenage years but so it took me a while, but it's once I got it, it was kind of like this, I was like this sponge. Really? And I just kind of soaked everything up in a very short period of time. And it was something like, I didn't realize that there was so much here that I could discover.
Was it at the Conservatoire that you began to think seriously about Western classical and opera?
So when I went to the Conservatoire, there were these wonderful teachers who happened to just kind of hear something in my voice.
Rome is now ruled by the Etruscan upstart Tarquinius Superbus, the proud king.
The opera really scratched an itch, which was, it's the performing arts, so it's kind of drama, it's acting on stage, it's theater, it's singing, there's movement involved, and there's languages, especially when you're singing in all these so it really scratched this itch that I didn't know I had.
So that transition to becoming a professional, how was that? How did that sort of develop, and where did you begin your professional kind of career?
Back when I was in India, I mean, there was some really interesting opportunities to be able to tour the world with some amazing musicians, which immediately kind of gave me this wonderful experience of being able to see music at the very largest scale. But then when I came to London, there were some incredible opportunities. I got to work with a fabulous composer, Orlando de la Martinez, who put me in one of her first operas. She's this wonderful Afro-Cuban composer, and she wrote. And then I got invited to to China, to Beijing, just before the pandemic, actually, to perform at the Beijing National Stadium. It was this wonderful, wonderful, big, almost Olympic level concert, which I got invited to perform as a soloist with. And, you know, there were so many different artists there.
It's very thrilling that you're in something like this, which obviously has a very kind of populist feel to it, because it's about Princess Diana, and everybody knows Princess Diana, everybody knows the tragic story. So it feels like your kind of public profile is going to increase somewhat, obviously doing things like this, and obviously being in the opera. But what is your kind of outlook beyond Silver Spoon?
Yeah, I mean, my in terms of like as I mentioned, you know, my ethnic heritage and who I am, it's a very interesting space to be in opera, because it's been you know, traditionally, in one sense, it's been seen in a certain light, and it's changing. Yeah, it's changing a lot now, and you know, the definition of opera itself is kind of expanding depending on who you ask. And that is very exciting to me. There's some wonderful productions happening at the moment. There's this one at the WNO, which is a great production with, you know, a bunch of friends of mine are in this. And then there's, you know, various things which are now expanding. It's not just about the diverse casting or anything, but it's exciting to me that there's actually stories being told of people who of different you know, origins and backstories, which are very interesting to, at least to me as an audience member as well. And I think that's really exciting. And a lot of that is also something beyond this as well, is that I'm also looking to how do I translate my excitement to something that can also possibly happen in India. So that's also something which I'm really passionate about. Like, how can is there a possibility that, you know, a musical that's written in India, you know, by people of Indian heritage for an Indian audience to be done at a very large scale? There are some wonderful productions that have already happened in India, but you know, I'm curious if I can be a part of that journey as well.
Yeah,
so, you know, all of those things.
An exciting phase where obviously things are developing, as you say, and there'll be possibly some big productions, and people like yourself who have obviously performed in the West, and maybe coming back to India and to performing there. I have performed in India. There's the, you know, there's an opera house there. There's a National Center of Performing Arts, and there's some great venues around it. I'm actually going back to India in July. I'll be there for a month, working in some of these venues. I see.
It's really this melding of art forms, isn't it? Because India has this wonderful heritage of the movie industry, and then it also has these folk traditions, and the classical arts are in India on one side. But then there's also like a lot of folk drama that happens in many states. And so my whole thing would be, is there a way to kind of capture that in its, so taking the way that, you know, a lot of Western classical opera and musical theater has melded these art forms, and then keeping that, just that sense of melding, and then bring it to India, but then using such rich heritage that India already has, but kind of just implementing the management style of Western classical.
Would you be interested in writing something, in creating a kind of book? And is that something in your thinking?
For sure. I mean, I've done that. I was working in India for a period of time back in 2016, 2017, and that was one of my projects, to actually write an entire musical collaboratively with an entire group of nearly 50 people. And it was such an exhilarating experience. And it's just because you could see these ideas percolating, where it was not just a musical idea, but it was a theatrical idea. It was a dramatical idea. It was this melding of art forms. And then you saw it being performed on stage, and it was a complete thing. And I was like, it's a no-brainer. I mean, as being in India, you see the drama, you see the movies that have all these wonderful music, and I'm like, this should happen on stage. There was one production with that happened, which I saw in India, which was wonderful, called Mughal-e-Azam, which was done at the National Center. A lot of my friends performed in it. It was a wonderful thing. But I think that there's also space beyond the traditional but very beautiful old historic kind of place, and something like a Hamilton, but like done within an India would be like my totally my thing.
The rich spurn me and pass by.
how do people react when you say you're an opera singer?
Most people are like pleasantly surprised, and they're always, especially within the Indian community, they're pleasantly surprised. They probably are not really sure what that entails, because there's a lot of comic representations of what opera is. So I don't necessarily fit those stereotypes. And from a Western perspective, I've always had great experiences. There have only been one or two occasions where people have not really, they've not immediately believed that, because they're like, oh, you might not be. That's been rare. Luckily, it's been very rare. I've not faced a lot of like, backlash or some sort of thing. Most of the people I've worked with have been they've been very welcoming. They've never questioned whether I was able to do a job or not, because they trusted the skills that I had. And so it's there, but it's, for me, it's an interesting, because I only know a handful of people who are doing opera at the moment, and from an Indian background as well, and Indian or even South Asian background. And so it's this little tight-knit community. Whenever you see someone who's in the same thing, you're always like, oh, it was great. I mean, just about a month and a half ago, I was able to meet up with about 3 or 4 others, all in the same thing, a pianist, a couple of singers, and we were all just like, oh, this is so cool. We're like a little bubble, but it's great. It's really great.
What is your kind of passion project? Is it to write something, or are you still looking to develop your singing practice? Well, what is the kind of your number one personal goal?
I'd really love to be able to entrench myself in the development that's happening in a very music theater sense, not necessarily from a movie standpoint or anything like that within the industry in India. And if I can do that, I would be very content. I'd be able to feel like I've actually, something that I kind of just happened to drift into, and now I'm doing fairly well for myself here. I feel like if I could at least implement a little bit or be a part of that change within India, it would bring me immense satisfaction that I was able to be a part of that change, at least. Yeah.
Poverty is a divine, and he that has not it shall be left